We are doing the final assembly on this frame-handled bowie knife. Watch to the end because I think this is gonna be my favorite knife yet. I'm using a GRS handpiece. The chisel works very similarly to a wood chisel. You have the face of the chisel, and then you have this little tiny heel right here at the point, and that allows you to adjust your depth. The gold inlay is completely finished. We have all the parts done. We've got our gold inlay on the sides of the handle, all around the guard, and I even put a nice little dot of gold right on the end of the pommel nut. The final embellishment we have left to do on this entire ginormous buoy build is to put some really small round grooves on the front spacer and pommel. The front spacer and pommel are Damascus pieces, and the round grooves should really add a nice little touch of embellishment without being overpowering. Is it just me or is that getting louder every time? There were a lot of questions in my mind when I started this knife, like how I was gonna get the mother of pearl slots cut in the sides of the handle and how I was gonna make a mechanism to hold the pieces together. We've conquered those problems, but I have one more thing that I'm a little bit scared of, and that's heat treating these fittings. The frame pieces in particular. These frame pieces are skinny, long pieces with lots of machined grooves and everything on them, and even some TIG welded pins that can cause some stress. So I'm extremely nervous about these pieces warping really badly. So the way I like to apply it is by heating the part up to about 500 or 600 degrees, just like that, until it turns like a gray color. And then I take a spoon and sprinkle it all over the part. Don't want any places on the part to be exposed to oxygen. Because if they're exposed to oxygen, you'll get scale, and the scale might leave a deep pit that you would have to like sand off. The anti-scaling compound left kind of a tough, hard layer of gunk on the surface. In order to get that off, I'm just putting the parts in some boiling water and just soaking them in there. The water's just now starting to heat up, and I can already see the anti-scaling compound is just dissolving right off the parts, so that's great. We're in my kitchen because it's finally time to do the full etch of the blade. One type of steel has nickel in it, so it resists the acid etch, and that's the type that stays nice and bright. The other type doesn't have the nickel in it, so it etches really nice and dark, and that's how you can actually see the pattern. So let's get this thing cleaned really, really well, and then we'll put it in our ferric chloride solution. Oh, that's crazy. Look at that pattern. Whoa. That is crazy cool looking. So to help get a nice clean etch, we take it out every couple minutes, neutralize it, and sand all these black oxides off, and it helps just have a cleaner, better quality etch. We want to neutralize it in between the cleaning cycles, because the cleaning cycles with sandpaper can take a few minutes, and we don't want that acid residue that's on the blade to keep etching while we're doing the sanding. We need more water. It's in the neutralizer. Got the oxides all sanded off. Now we just clean the blade and put it back in for another couple minutes. Repeat that process 3 to 5 times. The blade's been in the coffee for a couple minutes. I'm just gonna pull it out real quick, check and make sure everything's looking okay, and then we'll put it back in.
You've had lots of coffee breaks. It's about my turn. Coffee break.
3 days later.
I had to redo the coffee darkening over and over again because it just wasn't coming out how I wanted. I kept ending up with like a spot about as big as the end of my thumb. So I'd have to go back to putting my blade on a sanding block and sand the entire blade with some 3000 grit just to get rid of all the coffee darkening on the entire thing. Put it back in the coffee, let it soak for a long time, and by a long time I mean like in the 12 to 20 hour range, and then lightly polish all the yellow off the 15 and 20 once again with the sunshine cloth. I did that over and over again. This blade has probably spent somewhere around 40, 48 hours total in the coffee with the number of times I kept having to redo it. It's time to begin the gun bluing process. The first step of this process is to get the parts ready to go by buffing them and getting a beautiful mirrored finish. This is, without a doubt, the best finish I've ever gotten on steel before. It's because I did a two-step buff instead of one step, which I've pretty much always just done one step. Speaking of guard hangers, look at that, completely suspended. Ready to start taking out first parts. I'm gonna put it in the boiling water to let the water clean all the salts out of the inside of the part. And I guess take it inside. Here's what the part looks like when you take it out of the boiling water. It's got little particles of the bluing salts that are all broken down all over it, and it looks real scary. It's kind of like frosted, hazy looking, but normally that rinses right off. It's also maybe some of the minerals in the water. I should probably be using distilled water for the cleaner. I've said it once before and I'll say it again. The parts sure look good when they're wet. Oh man, it's beautiful. It's crazy beautiful. I can't remember the last time I got bluing perfect the first time. Can't remember. It's been over a year, I'm sure. I finished out the scales, the mother of pearl. I got them sanded up to 3000 grit. As I was finishing out these scales, I had a moment of realization that these may be the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in nature. There's just so much color and chatoyance and 3D and beautiful effects going on in here that it totally compares, in my opinion, to the most beautiful sunrise or sunset that I've ever seen. Almost brought a tear to my eye, if I can be totally true about it. We have one more nerve-wracking thing to do on this entire knife build, and that is to sharpen this massive 16.5-inch double-edged blade. So I'm gonna put masking tape on most of this blade to protect it, everything except for the very edge. And then we're gonna use my GRS engraver sharpening hone. It has diamond wheels that turn really slow, and we'll get it really close with that, and then we'll move on to a water stone and finish it up with that. Get it nice and hair popping sharp. What I'm looking for is a nice consistent sharpening line that is a nice consistent size all the way down both sides, or at least pretty close. And then it's gonna be a little bit bigger right here at the tip, the sharpening line, and that's just because I like to leave my tip a little bit thicker to give it some more strength. So because it's thicker, you're gonna get a little bit larger sharpening line right there around the tip. Now I'm switching to a 1200 grit stone, and we'll run it across there a few times and see how it's looking. gonna test all the way out at the very tip, because sometimes it's hard to get that very tip sharp. This one's popping hair all the way out to the very, very, very tip. And you can test the rest of the edge too, but normally it's easier to get the rest of the edge sharp. We still have to do this back one, and it's gonna be a lot more difficult because the angles are gonna be more aggressive, which means I'll have to tip the blade up more, which just makes it hard to get a really fine edge on it.
Across the pan.
Yeah.
You don't have to put it away, just leave it across the pan.
Yep, yep.
Get fluffy. Use it, abuse it. We'll straighten it out. Sort it all out later.
Before we put the knife together, we have one last thing to do, and that's to glue the mother of pearl scales into our cutouts in the sides of the handle. I'm gonna use some black, medium thick Starbond super glue. This is pretty nice and thick, so it won't run all over the place and make a tremendous mess. And the mother of pearl is actually really nice to work with in this case because we can get acetone on it and like clean off the excess super glue without worrying about hurting the mother of pearl, as long as you're just using a little bit of acetone. After 2.5 long months of working on this knife, it's finally time to put it all together, and it's done after that. I haven't counted them in a while, but I think there's 35 to 40-ish pieces. I need to count them as I put all this together, so I'll know for the final build how many it actually was. And I also need to be careful while I'm swinging around that big blade to make sure I don't bump it into anything, because it's nice and sharp and I don't want to accidentally dull it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37.
And last but not least, number 38. Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Oh, this is one of my favorite pieces of all times. It's right up there with the 2 swords that I made. It's so cool, even though it's not a sword. Just the satisfaction I got out of that clipping system in there, and just seeing the mother of pearl and the black metal all around it looks amazing. I love this piece so much. Oh, it feels so good. It's got this dark feeling to it because everything on this entire piece is pretty dark. You just have this gold that really pops, and then you've got the mother of pearl and your 15 and 20 on the blade. But overall, even the blade is pretty dark because we got the coffee darkening down on it. The mother of pearl looks so good with that black steel all around it. Oh man, I love this thing. Feels so good. Most difficult part of this knife build was the latching system that I made so that the handle scales could go together without any pins holding it together. I had a picture in my mind of what I wanted, but it took quite a bit of experimenting in order to get something that would actually work. I had something that would work right off the bat, but it didn't work long term. It came apart on me. I needed something that would be reliable, go back to the same position every time I clicked the pieces together. The Kerr latch, as I'm calling it, the Kyle Eugene Royer latch, was also one of my favorite parts of the build. Again, just because of the challenge that it provided and the fun outside of the box kind of unnecessariness of it. Like, pins would have been fine. The collector would be perfectly happy with pins, I'm sure. But it was fun to do something that took some extra time that really isn't gonna be seen because it's inside the knife. So just having the satisfaction of overcoming this challenge that I wanted to do was really rewarding. If you think up a challenging concept that may or may not get paid for in the short term by the customer, but it's just really gonna be rewarding if you can overcome this cool challenge and set a goal for yourself for some kind of new or different way you wanna do something on the project you're working on, then I wanna encourage you to go for it because it can be really rewarding and it's really satisfying to do something extra, even if you don't get paid for it sometimes. It's just a really, really rewarding thing, and that alone is payment. If you enjoyed this content and you want to help us out, then consider subscribing to the channel. It really does help us out a tremendous amount and enable us to make more videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching. May the forge be with you. Bye-bye. I just realized I didn't count the blade, and that's definitely one of these critical parts. So 39.